Willow had been getting very close to Makoto, the newly transferred underprivileged student. Everyone was placing bets on how long her rich, childhood sweetheart George would be able to hold back. After all, it was common knowledge that George liked Willow, yet no one expected this. After waiting an entire semester, George never once went to trouble Makoto. Someone finally couldn't sit still anymore and went to investigate. Only then did they discover that George was very busy. Busy doing charity, busy getting first place in exams, busy setting an example for his 3-year-old little devil of a brother, Jack. Chapter 1. My brother George is the villainous male supporting character in a novel, because the childhood sweetheart he grew up with fell in love with the male lead. He used his status as a rich second-generation heir to suppress and bully the male lead at school in every possible way. In the end, under the overpowering halo of the male and female leads, George's family was ruined and destroyed. No, absolutely not. I'm only 3 years old. I haven't even touched a black card yet. Is my laid-back rich kid life about to end just like that? In order to hold on to our wealth and luxury, I decided to keep my brother busy. The first task, getting the teacher to call the parents. George stared at the surveillance footage. The veins at his temples were bulging. He roared, "Jack, who told you could treat kids at kindergarten like horses and ride them?" I puffed out my chest and replied righteously, "I paid them." George ground his teeth in anger and said, "Does paying mean you're allowed to do that? Who taught you this?" I looked at him with an innocent, guileless face and said, "You did." George was speechless. I continued, "Brother, you're the one who said money can do anything. You paid the gardener uncle to shave his head. Why can't I pay to ride a horse? That's not fair." George choked. That really was something he had done. He thought the new gardener's hairstyle was ugly, so he slapped down a wad of cash and told him to shave it off. And he had casually uttered that legendary line. He never expected me to copy it word for word. On the way home, he was unusually silent. He probably wasn't reflecting on himself. More likely, he was worrying about the consequences my behavior might bring to the family. After all, this was an elite kindergarten. The classmates I had written all came from powerful, wealthy families as well. No matter what, he couldn't let me keep doing this. He thought about it all night. The next day, with dark circles under his eyes, he tried to reason with me. He said, "Jack, there's an old saying, when poor, cultivate yourself. When wealthy, help the world. We rich people must restrain our behavior even more. We can't use money to do bad things. We should use it to help others. Do you understand?" I looked at him with clear eyes and said, "I don't understand." George fell silent. "It's okay. Big brother will set an example for you." From that day on, every time he took me out, he practiced what he preached. Sometimes we went to orphanages to do charity. Sometimes he signed up for community volunteer work to pick up trash. Sometimes he donated supplies to children in remote mountain areas in my name. At first, it was all just to educate me. Later, he genuinely started to enjoy it. He even developed the habit of helping elderly ladies cross the street. Chapter 2. I finally stopped treating my classmates like horses. Before he could feel relieved for more than a few days, the second incident arrived. Once again, the teacher called the parents. The reason was that I had driven away the 5th oral English teacher. I attend a bilingual kindergarten. During the school anniversary celebration, the children are supposed to go on stage and perform in English. As for me, my current level was such that I couldn't understand a single word other kids were saying. George finally realized how serious the situation was. With a dangerous look in his eyes, he said, "Why aren't you studying properly with the teacher?" I replied smugly, "Because our family is rich." He snapped. "So being rich means you don't need to study properly. Who taught you that?" I answered, "You did." George fell silent. I continued, "Because you said only poor people need to study. Rich people just need to eat, drink, and have fun." George's face turned green with anger. He took a deep breath and said, "When did I ever say that?" I let out an "oh," and said, "Don't you remember? When Mom called and asked why you weren't studying hard, that's exactly what you told her." "Brother, you're my idol. I remember every word you say." "Pretty impressive, right?" George's face flushed bright red. From that day on, night after night, I could see him studying late into the night like someone hanging their head from a beam and stabbing their thigh with an awl. A month later, he placed 2 report cards in front of me. Last month's exam, and this month's exam. He had climbed more than 100 ranks. He said, "Jack, everyone needs to study. If you don't study, you'll become an idiot. Do you understand? Look, before, your brother didn't study, so I said stupid, thoughtless things. Now that I've studied, I understand that learning makes people smarter, gives them knowledge, motivation, and a sense of achievement. Do you really want to be an idiot forever?" Looking at the panda-like dark circles under George's eyes, I swallowed nervously. If studying turns you into that, that's terrifying. Being an idiot seemed much better. Seeing that I wasn't moved, George said ominously, "If you don't study, you won't know how to run a company. If you can't run a company, our family will go bankrupt. Do you want to become a beggar sleeping on the streets?" I shook my head in horror. George smiled in satisfaction. Hit the snake where it hurts most. Studying really does make people smarter. Chapter 3. The third task, and the most important one. Stopping George from sending a love letter to Willow, because Willow would reject him without hesitation. Out of humiliation and anger, George would hate the male lead even more. The childhood sweethearts would completely fall out, and that would plant the seeds of disaster. But during this period, George's attention was all on me. He didn't even have time to bother the male lead. Maybe he already didn't like Willow anymore. I needed to test him properly. George said, "I'm home." He looked a little tired today. I glanced into the car. As expected, Willow wasn't there. At some point, they had stopped going to and from school together. I pounced over and hugged his leg. Excitedly spreading out a piece of paper, I said, "Brother, this is the love letter I wrote for Jessica." George's expression changed instantly. He shouted, "You're this young and you're already writing love letters." After being yelled at, I threw myself onto the floor, crying and throwing a tantrum. I screamed, "I don't care. I want Jessica to be my girlfriend." George pressed his forehead. He had attended parent-teacher meetings for me before, so he had some impression of this Jessica. She was the prettiest and most popular girl in kindergarten. But she only liked playing with her desk mate. George asked me, "What if Jessica likes someone else and doesn't like you?" I clenched my little fists, righteously indignant. "Then I'll steal her away." George laughed in anger. He asked, "Who taught you that? Don't tell me this was also me." Before he could finish, he seemed to realize something and froze. His face turned slightly pale. I called out, "Brother." He snapped back to his senses and said firmly, "This kind of behavior is wrong. And you're still a child. You're not allowed to write love letters. I'm confiscating this." He snatched my love letter and went upstairs. I pouted, very unhappy. I asked, "Then when can I write one?" He gritted his teeth and said, "When you turn 18 and become an adult." Clinging to the railing, I shouted after him, "Then you're not allowed to write one either." George paused for a moment, then responded, I won't write one either." Oh yeah, George never lies to me. If he says he won't write one, he definitely won't. Sure enough, that night when I went into his room, I saw shredded pieces of a love letter. Had he really given up on Willow? I stumbled back to my room in a daze. The rich second-generation heir life, saved. Chapter 4. I thought the plot was finally about to change, but just a few days later, an uninvited guest arrived at our house, Anna. If nothing unexpected happened, she would be George's future arranged marriage partner. The two families had long agreed on a childhood betrothal. Her transfer to this school had been arranged by the elders, so that she and George could slowly cultivate feelings. But she had zero interest in a spoiled, playboy rich heir like George. Instead, she was attracted to the male lead, poor but unyielding. Both the childhood sweetheart and the future arranged partner liked the same men. This only added fuel to George's eventual descent into darkness, pushing him to obsessive, near-mad extremes. Readers hated him, but as his younger brother, all I felt was heartache. I tightened my grip on my backpack straps, staring warily at Anna. She had a refined, delicate kind of beauty. On her ears were a pair of snowflake earrings with an elegant sheen. She bent down and teased me. "Hi, George's little brother, what was your name again?" "TCH, the annoying second female lead. Don't even think about learning my name." I snorted and turned my head away, ignoring her. Anna looked a little surprised. She said, "You're quite like your brother." I froze mid-step. Then I heard her continue, both equally rude. My face twisted in anger. "You're not allowed to talk about my brother." She was about to say more, when George's voice came down from upstairs. "Jack, go watch some cartoons for a bit. The butler made you some dessert." I looked up at him and smiled brightly. "Okay." Anna pointed at herself, tilted her head, and asked, "What about me? What about me?" George glanced at her coldly and said, "Come to my room." Anna looked as if she'd been struck by lightning. Her cheeks flushed red as she stood there in a daze. I heard her murmur softly, "Isn't this a bit inappropriate? Isn't this moving way too fast?" I rolled my eyes. Chapter 5. After the butler set up my cartoons and dessert, he left. When I heard his footsteps fade away, I immediately tiptoed upstairs. I pressed myself against George's door, ears perked up, eavesdropping. Fragmented voices drifted out from inside. Anna snorted coldly. "Let's get straight to the point. As long as you're willing to tell Uncle and Auntie to cancel the engagement, I'll owe you a favor." George let out a cold laugh. "Why don't you tell your parents yourself?" Anna replied irritably. "If my parents would agree, I wouldn't have had to transfer schools. George fell silent for a moment. Then he said in a low voice, "Fine, as long as you help me with something, I'll be the one to bring it up. I guarantee you'll be satisfied with the outcome." Anna asked. "What kind of help?" George replied. "Pretend to be my girlfriend." Anna sounded surprised. She said, "Don't tell me you want me to help you test your childhood sweetheart." George didn't answer. Instead, he asked, "You unwilling?" Anna chuckled softly. "Then it's a deal. I'll help set you two up." Bang. My head slammed into the door. Tears instantly welled up. I whimpered. "That hurts." George opened the door, clearly startled. Speechless, he said, "Jack, why are you here?" I burst into genuine sobs. This is bad. He really did stop sending love letters, but now the situation is even worse. George hasn't let go of Willow at all. My rich second-generation heir life is still hanging by a thread. George grabbed me and lifted me up. The two of us locked eyes, both looking strangely conflicted, seeing the helpless, bitter smile on his face. I made up my mind, no matter what, I was going to change his fate. Chapter 6. George started going to and from school with Anna. Little by little, she began coming to our house more and more often. The two of them got along better and better. And it really did seem like they'd become genuine friends. When George took me out to have fun, he would bring her along too. We ordered afternoon tea at a cafe. George went to the shop across the street to buy me some ice cream. Anna rested her chin on one hand, staring dreamily at his back like a love-struck fool. I stared at her suspiciously. Anna snapped out of it, snorted lightly, and said, "Oh, George's little brother, what is it?" I pushed the pudding on the table toward her. Anna's eyes sparkled. "For me?" I nodded. I said, "Big sister, can you tell me about my brother at school?" I thought to myself, it would be best if she told me more about Willow and the male lead. Know the enemy and know yourself, and you'll never lose a battle. I cracked my knuckles in anticipation, but instead, I saw her ears slowly turn red. She said, Your brother, he studies really hard." I was full of question marks. She continued, "And he's very willing to help others. Once, he saw a lost elderly lady by the roadside and even had the driver take her home. We almost ended up late." My face was now covered in question marks. Anna's eyes shimmered as she went on. "And he's really, really gentle." My head filled with even more question marks. Second female lead. "It's only been half a month. Have you been possessed by a ghost?" And this is not what I wanted to hear. Wait. A flash of inspiration struck. I interrupted her and asked, "Then has my brother been dating any girls?" Anna seemed to think of something. Her smile faded slightly. She frowned and said, "You're so young, why are you asking about things like that?" I let out a cheeky laugh. I said, "Because my brother told me that underage dating is bad, so I have to supervise him too and make sure he doesn't date early." Sister Anna, don't you think I'm right? Anna froze for a moment. Then her eyes lit up instantly. She said, "That's right. Underage dating is wrong. You need to supervise him." Big hand and small hand slapped together happily. A temporary alliance, officially formed. Chapter 7. At last, it was time for George and Anna's first date. More precisely, Anna had found out that the male lead had invited Willow to the amusement park. They deliberately came to sabotage it. Oh no, to accidentally run into them. After everyone met up, it turned into a four-person outing. Willow glanced behind them, a hint of disgust in her eyes. She said, "Why did you bring him along too?" George turned around. His pupils shrank violently. He exclaimed in shock, "Jack. Heh. This was a rare chance to keep an eye on them. Definitely not because I wanted to play." "Yo, kid, you sneak out on your own?" someone teased. I tilted my head curiously. This was the first time I finally got a good look at the male lead. Handsome face, tall build. When he spoke to me, he even flashed a roguish, charming smile. Then I looked at my brother. His jaw was clenched tight, his eyes so dangerous they looked ready to shoot fire at any second. I swallowed hard and decisively ducked behind Anna to shift the blame. I said, "Big sister Anna brought me." Anna's face filled with question marks. Willow frowned and said, "If that's the case, there's no need to stay together. Makoto, let's go." "Don't bother with them." She grabbed Makoto by the sleeve and walked off, not giving anyone a chance to speak. Makoto looked back and made all kinds of silly faces at me. I was speechless. George stared in the direction they left, his fists clenched tightly. "It must hurt a lot, right?" I gently tugged on his sleeve. I said, "I'm sorry, brother. Hit me if you want. I shouldn't have asked big sister to bring me." Anna also looked embarrassed and spoke up, sounding wronged. "I'm sorry, brother. Hit me if you want. I shouldn't have softened and brought him." I was speechless. She stole my line and subtly threw shade at me. "Just you wait." George let out a sigh and smiled helplessly. It really has been a long time since I last brought you to the amusement park. Let's have fun today, I cheered. Yay. Chapter 8. After playing a few kids' rides, we passed by a souvenir shop. I got stuck staring at the toys inside and couldn't move on. George was clearly used to this. He ignored me and was about to walk past. But the next second, Anna took my hand and pulled me inside. George had no choice but to follow. When we reached the mask section, I stopped. Anna instantly understood and immediately took down my favorite clown mask and put it on me. I pointed at the extra-large version of the same mask next to it. I said, "Brother, you should wear one too." George was speechless. He said flatly, "No, I refuse." I pouted, and tears immediately welled up in my eyes. George rubbed his forehead helplessly and said, "Fine, fine, I'll wear it." "Okay." He somewhat roughly grabbed one and put it on himself. I turned my head and said, "And Sister Anna too." George glared at me. "Jack, that's enough." Anna watched us bicker, the smile on her lips never fading. She said, "All right, I'll wear one too." Now I was satisfied. I said, "A family should match neatly from head to toe." The two of them looked at each other, then quickly looked away. George looked disgusted. Anna looked shy. While checking out, people behind us were quietly whispering. Someone said, "This family is so good looking. The parents look like celebrities. They're so young, probably older brother and sister. Hee hee, they look like a young couple. Such a perfect match, so pleasing to the eye." I glanced at Anna. "Oh wow, this is bad." Her whole face instantly turned red. George said, "Let's go." He grabbed my hand and pulled me away. At the escape room entrance, we ran into Willow and Makoto again. Willow noticed the masks on George and Anna, her gaze turning even colder. Makoto took the initiative to invite us. He said, "We're going to play an escape room. Want to join us?" George didn't say anything. I knew he wanted to go, but he was worried about taking care of me. So I ran up to the front desk staff on my own. I said, "Brother, you and sister go play. I'll wait here nicely." "Okay." George bought me an ice cream. He said, "Don't run around." I nodded obediently and glanced at Anna again. I whispered to him, "Protect Sister Anna well." "Okay, don't lose her dot." George smiled. "Roger that, Commander." Chapter 9. After coming out, George seemed distracted. He said he'd been messed with by the NPCs, but I saw the worry and restlessness hidden in Anna's expression. It didn't seem that simple. On the way back, no one spoke. The atmosphere was heavy and stifling. That night, George's eyes were red. He didn't eat dinner and went straight to his room to sleep. It was because of Willow, wasn't it? I clenched my little fists. Next time she comes to my house, I'll definitely make her regret it. Anna also stopped coming over much. I overheard George say to her, "The deal is over. Don't worry. I'll step in and propose canceling the engagement." They seemed to have had a fight. When Anna left, she looked devastated. Her eyes were even redder than George's. After that day, George went back to going to and from school alone. His emotions were steady. Everything seemed normal, but I always felt that he had become lonelier. I didn't know what to do. Maybe it would be better if Mom and Dad were around. So I whined and begged them over the phone to come back. A few days later, they returned. They brought me a huge pile of gifts. Toy cars, robots, game consoles. I was happy for a while. Then it hit me. I hadn't gotten anything for my brother. I looked at George. He had no particular expression. Or rather, he was used to it. It had always been like this throughout my entire infancy. I just hadn't noticed until now. The Ultraman figure in my hand fell to the floor. My eyes instantly filled with tears, as if I had connected with George's inner world. Suddenly, I felt overwhelmingly sad. Chapter 10. As far as I can remember, Mom and Dad were always busy. They only came home a few times a year, but the housekeeper said things got much better after I was born. Their business was overseas. Before that, there were years when they didn't even meet once. They missed George's entire childhood. So when brother saw this scene now, it must have been painful for him, right? That night, I called them into my room. Hands on my hips, I demanded, "Why didn't Mom and Dad buy a gift for brother?" They looked at each other. Dad scratched his head and said, "We transferred a lot of money to your brother. He can buy whatever he likes himself." Mom nodded too. "After he grew up, he stopped being close to us. Sometimes when we want to buy him things, he just says no. We don't even know what he likes anymore, because what he needs is your company, and you can't give him that. Of course he says no." I was very angry. I said, "Even if brother grows up, he's still your child." Mom looked a little surprised. She asked, "Why are you suddenly unhappy?" I lowered my head and said gloomily, "Because you only bought gifts for me and not for brother, so I'm unhappy." I said, "We're both Mom and Dad's children. How can you only buy gifts for one child? The child who doesn't get a gift will feel sad. If brother is sad, I'll be sad too. Even if I get gifts, I won't be happy. Mom and Dad. Favoritism is wrong. They froze. After a long while, Dad gently patted my head. He said, "Then Jack, tell Mom and Dad what your brother likes. Tomorrow we'll go to the mall together and buy him a gift." "Okay." I suddenly looked up. "Really?" Mom smiled too. She said, "But you can't tell your brother. It's a surprise." I shouted happily. "Yay. We'll secretly go to the mall. I won't tell brother." Chapter 11. The next day, we set out early. Mom picked winter clothes for brother at the mall. Dad took charge of all kinds of electronics like phones and headphones. I picked out a new pair of sneakers for George. Brother loves playing soccer. He'll definitely like this gift. Dad stared at a watch in the display case for a long time. Mom said, "Our son is almost an adult already. It still doesn't feel real." Dad sighed as well. He said, "We've been so busy with work all these years. We've spent too little time with our children. We owe him." In the end, they bought that watch because they felt George would like it. I urged them to go home, eager to see brother's happy face when he received the gifts. But the housekeeper said he'd gone to a classmate's house. This was the first time brother hadn't come home for the night. I wasn't used to it at all. I tossed and turned for a long time, unable to sleep. Later, I secretly slipped into George's room. Only after lying on the sofa in his room did I finally fall asleep, half dazed. The next day, George came back after school, but he was very strange today. He didn't talk to me. He didn't even look at me and went straight back to his room. Was he in a bad mood again because of Willow? I ran to his door and knocked. "Brother, do you want some fruit?" "Brother, play with me for a bit." "Brother, I learned a magic trick from my desk mate. Do you want to see it?" George's impatient voice came from inside. "Jack, if you've got nothing to do, can you stop bothering me?" I felt a little wronged. Tears fell uncontrollably. One by one, I sobbed. "Brother, did I do something wrong that made you hate me?" He suddenly pulled the door open. His emotions finally exploded. He said word by word, "Yes, you're right. I do hate you. And don't call me brother anymore. Do you know that you're not my little brother at all?" The air instantly went silent. Then he changed his tone. "That night, I heard it. You and Mom and Dad went to the mall and didn't want to tell me. You're the real family. Then why come looking for me? Anyway, you never treated me as your brother." Bang. He slammed the door shut. Chapter 12. What George Wong said was true. I am not his biological younger brother. My biological parents died in a car accident. Only I, still in my mother's womb, survived. Mr. and Mrs. Wong were close friends of my parents. That was why I was adopted. These memories only came back on my 3rd birthday, when the plot awakened. In the original book, I didn't even exist. Maybe I was supposed to die in that car accident too, but by some twist of fate, I survived, and became George's younger brother. After the plot awakened, my memories from infancy suddenly became vivid. He would gag in disgust, almost dry heaving, yet still change my diapers while retching. He yawned and cursed about how troublesome I was, yet gently rocked me to sleep. When I was sick with a fever and cried nonstop, the nanny couldn't calm me down no matter what she did. But as long as George was by my side, I could fall asleep peacefully. Half asleep, I once heard him sigh softly and say, "In this world, you're probably the only one who likes me. Honestly, saying you're a bother is a lie. Having you with me makes me really happy." That was the kind of person he was. Someone whose words never matched his heart, even when he was this angry. Even when the words were right on the tip of his tongue, he still didn't say them out loud. Clearly, if he had just said it, I would have never dared to bother him like this again. I'm not even his real brother. What right did I have to ask for so much? But he didn't say it. The truth took a detour and turned into a sentence spoken out of spite. Or rather, in his heart, I was his real younger brother. That was why secretly going to the mall with Mom and Dad made him so furious. How could a George like this possibly be the vicious male supporting character from the book? He was the best brother in the world, and the family member I loved the most. Chapter 13. After Mom and Dad came back, the surprise that had almost turned into a scare was finally delivered. I didn't know what they said to George. He sprinted downstairs, not even having time to put on his shoes. I was watching cartoons. When I saw George appear, my eyes lit up. I said, "Brother, you're not mad anymore?" He suddenly lifted me up and fiercely pinched my cheeks, but what he said was, "I'm sorry." His voice was hoarse. "Little brother, I'm sorry." I very generously patted him. I said, "Once we're brothers, what's there left to say?" George was speechless. This time, he didn't even need to ask. He knew he'd taught me that himself. I said, "I know you were mad because you misunderstood, thinking Mom and Dad and I were ignoring you. Brother, we'll always be a family, right?" George nodded. He said, "Yeah, we're a family. You'll always be my little brother." I grinned. Seizing the chance, I made a request. "Then can you watch cartoons with me?" He sat down beside me, helplessly. He said, "Only half an hour." I tried to bargain. "Just a little longer, please?" George shook his head and said firmly, "No, it'll ruin your eyes." Yep, still the same familiar brother. At the entrance of the media room, Mom and Dad looked at each other. Both of them smiled. Chapter 14. Anna started going to and from school with George again. I only found out much later. Turns out George didn't go home that day. He went to watch the stars with Anna. Now Anna even comes over to my house on weekends. She lounged comfortably, half reclining on the sofa while eating fruit. When she noticed me staring at her, she blinked at me playfully and said, "I know, you're craving snacks, right? I'll go ask your brother for some." After saying that, she hummed a tune and got up, heading toward the yard. I was speechless. I'd given her another chance to stick to George again. I narrowed my eyes at her love-struck, fangirl look. My fists clenched tight. It made me furious. She was always hogging my brother's time. Time that was supposed to be spent with me. Forget it. My brother had been in a really good mood lately. And honestly, it was thanks to her. The day George completely lets go of Willow will be the day my temporary alliance with Anna officially falls apart. Speak of the devil. Willow showed up at my house, something that almost never happened. When she saw me, she instinctively frowned. She asked, "Where's your brother?" Willow had never liked me. Maybe we were just born with incompatible auras. When I was a baby, I'd cry the moment she held me. Once, I even peed all over her. After the storyline awakened, I disliked her even more. And Willow was the same. She always pulled a long face whenever she saw me. I answered obediently. "My brother's in the yard." She looked at me strangely, as if she couldn't understand why I was being so well-behaved today. She shot me a sidelong glance, said nothing more, and turned toward the yard. I secretly followed her. A moment later, she stopped. Following her line of sight, I saw Anna, puffed up with anger, was chasing George with a garden hose. George was soaked through, running and laughing as he begged for mercy, promising he wouldn't dare do it again. It was obvious they were having a great time. The smiles on their faces were pure, without a trace of pretense. Sunlight fell on them, dazzlingly bright. To Willow, that scene must have been blinding. It was a smile George had never shown when he was with her. Willow was aloof by nature, picky, always finding fault at the slightest dissatisfaction, let alone joking around. Just sitting beside her made people unconsciously tense and anxious. Someone like her only made an exception for the legendary warm, gentle male lead. George was clearly better suited to someone on the same wavelength. Willow stood frozen in place. A flash of panic crossed her eyes, so fast it was almost impossible to catch. Even her heart seemed to sense an urgent pressure, thumping wildly in her chest. She stared straight at George, a rare look of helpless confusion appearing on her face. Suddenly, I understood. I asked, "Do you want to play too?" As soon as I finished speaking, I sprayed her full in the face with a water gun. Droplets slid down her cheeks, making her look pitiful and wronged. But this time, she didn't say a single word. She wiped the water from the corners of her eyes and turned away, leaving. Chapter 15. Time flew by. In the blink of an eye, I was already a kid in the senior year of kindergarten. George and Anna were about to take their college entrance exams. Mom and Dad asked George whether he wanted to study abroad. He refused. My brother must be unwilling to leave me. Hee. After school today, it was Anna who came to pick me up. She said, Come on, I'm taking you to eat something delicious." George had gone with our parents to a charity gala. Sister Anna said she wanted to take me out to have some fun, because she needed a favor from me. She wanted me to help her think of an idea. Anna rested her chin on one hand, looking troubled. She puffed up her cheeks and complained, "Why doesn't that idiot understand? He's always hot and cold with me, and I don't even know why. But lately he's been especially distant." Sipping my juice, I said, "My brother wouldn't be cold to someone for no reason. Maybe you did something wrong." Anna suddenly remembered something and immediately felt guilty. Her voice dropped so low it was almost like she was talking to herself. She said, "Could it be because I told Makoto to keep his girlfriend in check and stop coming around to flirt with George? So George got mad?" She said indignantly. "What's so good about Willow? That toxic cheater anyway. She's not prettier than me. Her figure isn't better than mine either. And she walks around every day with a face like everyone owes her money. What on earth does George like about her?" The storyline seemed completely broken. Anna had zero interest in the male lead and had fallen for George instead. And George, every morning before leaving, he would always glance through the window at someone's silhouette. Even his footsteps going downstairs had become noticeably more hurried. It seemed he really didn't like Willow anymore. Of course, I had no intention of telling Anna any of that. Otherwise, my brother would spend all his time with her and have no time left to play with me. In the end, she decided to get George a gift to apologize. When we got to the mall, I regretted it. I never expected shopping with a woman to be even more exhausting than playing sandbags. She kept getting distracted halfway, either stopping to try on dresses, or going to test out cosmetics. Anyone who didn't know better would think she was picking gifts for herself. After wandering around for ages, she finally found something she was satisfied with. However, something even worse happened. After we left the mall, I got lost. Chapter 16. Generally speaking, I would never go with a stranger, but that stranger's voice sounded a lot like Anna's. I was so tired I didn't even want to lift my head. I followed him absent-mindedly for a while before realizing I'd gone with the wrong person. There were people everywhere. The surroundings were completely unfamiliar. Just as I was about to go look for a police officer, a bright, cheerful male voice suddenly sounded behind me. "Yo, kid, are you George's little brother?" Whoa, it was the male lead. His eyes widened slightly as he asked, "Wait, why are you here all by yourself?" I looked up at him and said, "Hey, mister, I'm lost. Can I borrow your phone?" He looked totally confused but nodded anyway. "Oh, okay." I took the phone and called George. I told him to let Anna know. I even added that he shouldn't scold her. After all, before she went to buy me ice cream, she'd repeatedly warned me not to wander off. This really wasn't her fault. George was both angry and speechless. He said, "Why would I scold her? Your legs are on your own body. Just you wait, come back and see how you're getting beaten." I was speechless. George thanked Makoto. Makoto stayed with me for a while, played some games with me, and kept rubbing my head like crazy, unable to stop. I cautiously struck up a conversation with him. "Makoto, are you close with my brother?" He thought for a few seconds, rubbed his chin, and said, "We haven't talked that much, but I think your brother is pretty amazing. He gets great grades, he's knowledgeable, and he's really popular." Makoto smiled and sighed. Honestly, I kind of envy him. Only then did I finally relax. His tone was sincere, it didn't sound fake. As long as there was no bad blood between them, I was relieved. The protagonist's halo absolutely had to stay far, far away from my brother. When Anna finally rushed over, her face was completely red. She'd obviously been searching for me for a long time. I felt a little guilty. I took the initiative to tug on the hem of her skirt and said, "Sister Anna, I'll help you out with my brother." Anna's pouting lips slowly curved into a smile. The lecture she'd been about to give me took a sudden turn instead. She clasped her hands together, eyes full of hope, and said, "Then I'll be counting on you." Chapter 17. At night, my brother and I slept in the same room. In the darkness, he kept tossing and turning, unable to fall asleep. He asked me, "Jack, what kind of person do you think Makoto is?" I thought about it for a moment and answered honestly, "Him? He's a really interesting big brother, and we're super close." George paused, then smiled and asked, "Sounds like you like him quite a bit." I nodded. I think he's genuinely a really good person. I also told George what Makoto had said before. George fell silent for a long time after that, so long that I was almost asleep. Only then did I hear him sigh softly and say, "He really is a good guy." No wonder even Anna. My head was getting heavy with sleep, but suddenly, a thought crossed my mind. Could it be that my brother had misunderstood Anna? And that was why he'd been distancing himself from her. I had promised to help her, so I told George about Anna's worries. He didn't reply, but he stopped tossing and turning. I figured my brother would probably get a good night's sleep tonight. The next day, George's footsteps as he left the house became hurried again. I saw them standing face to face. Both of them looked a little awkward. Anna took a lipstick out of her pocket. I didn't really understand it, but this was the gift she'd spent an entire afternoon choosing. She said, "A present for you. Want to try it?" As she spoke, she applied it to her own lips. George scratched his head, completely dumbfounded. His expression a little silly. A few seconds passed before it finally registered. His face turned red like a boiled shrimp, and he became utterly dazed. I saw Anna rise up on her tiptoes. Slowly, she closed her eyes. "Oh no, can't keep watching this. I'm going to be late for kindergarten." Chapter 18. During the lunch break, George sent Makoto a text message. "Old equipment room in the West Wing. Can we meet?" Makoto was a little surprised, but he agreed anyway. What he didn't expect was that George had come specifically to thank him for what happened yesterday. George said, "Thanks to you yesterday, seriously, otherwise, things could have gone very wrong." Makoto waved his hands repeatedly. "No need to thank me. It was nothing. I didn't really do anything. And your brother's a smart kid. Even if he hadn't run into me, he would have gone to the police himself." George smiled and handed him an envelope. "That may be true, but a thank you gift is still necessary. That's also what my parents wanted. If you ever need help in the future, you can contact me." Makoto refused again and again. He genuinely felt he hadn't done much, but George set the money down and left. What he didn't expect was for Willow to appear at the doorway. It was as if some long-held suspicion had finally been confirmed. She gave George a mocking smile. With a cold snort, Willow said, "Didn't you say you don't like me anymore? Then why are you still coming to cause trouble for Makoto?" Her eyes landed on the money on the table. The disdain in her gaze deepened. "George, humiliating people with money, your methods are just as nasty as ever," she said. "But Makoto isn't like someone like you." After that, she flung the envelope to the ground. The money spilled out. Makoto watched Willow's retreating figure. With sharp intuition, he realized that what she was feeling now wasn't anger. It was joy. Her heart, which had been restless and anxious for so long, finally settled, because she was convinced that George still cared about her. But George no longer had the patience to guess at Willow's thoughts. Nor did he care about her emotions. He only let out a cold laugh and said, "Willow, we grew up together. I thought that even if you didn't like me, you wouldn't think of me as someone this despicable. I wouldn't do something like that, and I certainly wouldn't do it for you. From now on, we're no longer friends." After George left, Willow stood frozen in place. Makoto bent down, picked up the envelope from the ground, and brushed off every bit of dust on it. With a roguish grin, he said, "Willow Lu, Miss Lu, you might not know this, but you really misjudged me. I'm just a vulgar guy, greedy and lustful. And of course, what I love most is money." There was no response. He chuckled again. "You misjudged me because what you liked was only the version of me you imagined. You said I'm different from someone like George. He has money, status, and family. That part's true. I'm nothing like him. I have nothing at all. So when you took the initiative to get close to me, it felt unreal, like a dream to me. Wasn't that a chance to turn my life around? So I wanted to seize it. I even once treated George as an imaginary rival, but I quickly realized that the one you liked wasn't me at all. You were just repeatedly testing George, trying to control him. You wanted to see him get jealous. You wanted to see how much he loved you. You relied on the fact that George liked you, and you pushed things endlessly. Too bad, you overplayed your hand. Now that I think about it, you actually understand me less than George does. He knows I need this money. This money is enough to buy my grandpa a hearing aid, enough to pay my college tuition, enough to help me withstand some risks in an uncertain future. Oh, right, this is his thank you gift for me helping his brother. It's not an insult, but if you think giving money is humiliation, then feel free to humiliate me too." Makoto tucked the envelope away and walked out. Without turning his head back, he said, "This dream is over, for both you and me. I'll be very busy from now on. Don't contact me again." The people who had once made bets just to watch the drama could never have imagined it. Willow was dumped at the same time by her rich second-generation childhood sweetheart, and by a poor student. It really was a memorable piece of campus gossip. Chapter 19. After the college entrance exams ended, Willow sent George a box. Inside the box was a scarf she had knitted herself. Along with an apology card, she begged George to go abroad with her, to start over together. George said nothing after reading it. He stared at the scarf for a long time. That look made Anna unhappy. She didn't even care that I was there. She stood in front of George, cheeks puffed up, full of indignation. "You're not seriously thinking of going abroad with her, are you? My parents sent me to you. You have to take responsibility for me. We have an arranged engagement." George rolled his eyes at her. "Weren't you the one who kept wanting me to cancel it?" Anna shook her head like a rattle drum, clinging tightly to his arm. "I don't want to cancel it. A marriage arranged by our parents and matchmakers, of course it can't be cancelled." George was speechless. He patted her gently and coaxed her in a low voice. "What are you talking about? I never planned to go abroad with her. I was just thinking about whether to throw this scarf away or return it to her." Color finally returned to Anna's face. "Really?" George shrugged, his tone indulgent. "After all, I already have a fiancé. I can't be accepting things from other women." Once Anna reacted, she was so excited she could barely contain herself. She pulled out her phone, but failed to unlock it several times in a row. Stammering, she said, Quick, hurry up and make it official." And just like that, the temporary alliance was completely shattered. I stormed off in fury. I'm not playing with those two anymore. Chapter 20. On the day of George's coming-of-age ceremony, he invited many classmates from school. Makoto was there too. I quite liked him, so I took the initiative to go say hello. When Makoto saw me, his eyes lit up just like before. "Jack, long time no see. Don't run off." "Ah." My head once again failed to escape his evil hands. The music started. George was going to dance the first dance with Anna. When Anna came down the spiral staircase, I was almost stunned by how beautiful she looked. She looked like a princess who had stepped straight out of a fairy tale. She had lip gloss on, her lips were shiny and bright. Don't tell me she'd once again used the excuse of buying a gift for someone else to shop for herself. George held Anna's hand like a gentleman. They looked at each other and smiled. Makoto sighed. They actually look pretty well matched. Right, right. See, my taste is impeccable. Without me, this whole family would have fallen apart. I couldn't help but grin. This is great. My laid-back rich kid life is finally secured.